is a statesman? That becomes the very important question. And to find out this answer, we need to look back in the history. Because the concept of statesmanship, from the very beginning, I must say that it carries a degree of elitism. When we talk about persuasion, there comes the role of rhetoric and dialogue. Their love for monologue, that is also very threatening. That is, we also need to think about. Instead of dialogue, a statesman is someone who emerges from the crisis, but who is not above us. He or she is among us. Statesmanship and its components, or how statesmanship can be nurtured, or how statesmanship can be spread in a sense of our understanding of the world. So, at the very initial stage, what we need to look into, we need to find out the political realms in its historical context. And mostly, when we talk about statesmanship, we uh, primarily deal with the political realms. But how did it come to existence? That we need to explore as well. Its practical part and its theoretical part. So, when we started our journey as a human community, and when we started to settle down, leaving our nomadic life behind, we formed a society. And as a society, we had certain necessities to be fulfilled, certain functions to be carried out. So, if we go back and try to draw a broad history of our origin, we'll find that to fulfill certain functions, certain group of people, certain category of people were entrusted with certain functions. And I am taking it out from Thomas Piketty's Capital and Ideology, where he explains how trifunctional society was the foundation of our journey today. Trifunctional society carried out three important functions. The first group, that is nobility, that held the military power and that provided security to the people. So we mostly associate kings and political power with this group of people. Then comes the clergy, or those with religious power. They set the values and norms of the society. And then to need to meet their material needs, we had third estate or common people, artisans, peasants, farmers, traders. They constituted the third estate or the third category of people. So these three distinct groups of people carried out three distinct functions in the society. More or less, we started our journey like this. This is the concept of trifunctional society. So when we talk about statesmanship, authority, power, we mostly focus on nobility or the king or the political realms. So this is the practical part where statesmanship we expect it to emerge from. And now we move to the theoretical part to explain how authority is constructed, what was the necessity for this. So in the next slide, the most popular or widely accepted theory of our societal existence is the social contract theory. So, as illustrated by Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Rousseau, according to their explanation, that society in its very early form was in a state of conflict. So we fought among ourselves, but at the same time, we are also rational being. We understand our interest the best, and we realize that fighting will be of no benefit for most of us. So to overcome this eternal war or the fighting, in fighting, we resolved that we need an authority who will rule over us and will bring order in our society. So Hobbes talks about absolutism, that for him, the foundation of this authority will be the might, or the popular concept is might is right kind of thing, where the authority will be bestowed upon the mightiest or the worthiest, the sovereign power. Locke further refines this idea, and he focuses on liberty, because we are not surrendering to the mightiest authority. Actually, we are ensuring that our rights are protected, our rights to life, our rights to property, and our liberty is protected. So Locke refines the absolutism that is provided by Hobbes, and then it moves further to Rousseau's general will. So what would be the source or the foundation of this authority? That is general will. The people is at the center of this arrangement, this political arrangement, where the authority will reflect the will of the people, and if the authority fails, uh, the authority can be overthrown or replaced. So this is the theoretical arrangement, how the state, the power, or the authority came into existence. I am using these terms interchangeably, though they carry distinct meanings of it their selves. But I am using them, power, authority, or state, interchangeably for a better comprehension or for convenient understanding. Now, the general will that will be reflected, and the authority that will emerge out of it, can claim legitimacy, that uh, the authority that emerges out of general will carries the mandate of the people. So we found the seed of democratic government in Rousseau's general will. However, Rousseau doesn't didn't make any difference, majoritarian rule or the general rule, or he didn't explore into those nitty gritties, which has now become very relevant to explore further. Anyway, now from general will, or the authority that comes up, that has the potential to emerge as a statesman. But still, what we need to explore further, that what should be the source of this authority, or what are the types of this authority, where Hobbes arguing for absolute power or the monarchical, absolute monarchical power, John Locke focusing on liberty, Rousseau talking about general will. Now, what should be the base of this authority, and what are the types of these authorities? So for that, we'll move forward, and we'll come to the types of authorities in the next slide, in the types of authority explored by Max Weber. Because we are yet to reach to statesmanship. We are just laying down the foundation of statesmanship that we are supposed to explore in this lecture. So Max Weber, when talking about authority, he presents three types of authority: traditional, charismatic, or legal rational authority or leadership. For the traditional authority or leadership, he is talking or referring to the feudal society, feudal patriarchal society, where power is impersonal, power is in the favor of status quo, power is exclusionary, and it is also non-rational in nature. Then comes to the charismatic authority. Here, the authority is dynamic, and much of the authority comes from the personal capacity of the leader to mold, to take people along with him or her, and to set example for others to emulate. It has personal touch, but it is non-rational, because it often appeals to emotion. It has its own rules to deal with, and it is dynamic in nature. So in contrast with the traditional authority, charismatic authority is more dynamic. However, both are non-rational. So to say non-rational, in the third types of authority, we'll explain it further, that legal rational authority. Legal rational authority emerges when the society goes through bureaucratization. So when the society takes a more complex structure, we have to manage it properly. So we need to create certain authority that has the sanction of legal and rational foundation. So it is in the bureaucratic society that we found the legal rational authority. It is impersonal in nature but rational. It follows a particular format. It works through a chain of commands. So now these three types of authorities all of them have the potential to produce a statesman. However, when we look forward or when we explore the possibility of emergence of a statesman, we confine ourselves to the political realms and we mostly talk about charismatic leadership or authority. However, there are exceptions. However, the scope for a statesman to emerge is also widening in course of time. That will also we'll discuss in the later part of this presentation. So now, next slide. Who is a statesman? That becomes a very important question. And to find out this answer, we need to look back in the history. Because the concept of statesmanship, from the very beginning, I must say that it carries a degree of elitism. It it has its legacy in aristocracy, and it is also a gendered notion. So for these reasons, statesmanship is often criticized or looked down upon uh, for its aristocratic elitist origin. However, for today's discussion, we'll keep those things aside and focus mainly what statesmanship actually mean. So in statesman or politicus, Plato represents the characteristics of a statesman. One who possesses special knowledge, governesses, to rule justly, to rule justly for the interest of the citizens. So there is a typo. So to rule justly for the interest of the citizens. So from this definition or from the outline of this definition, we can uh, get a few of the characteristics of a statesman: having special knowledge, with a sense of justice, who rules justly, and for the interest of the citizens. These three factors uh, become the foundation of statesmanship. So, special knowledge is focused because a statesman is supposed to, according to what is presented in the statesman or the politicus, supposed to have special knowledge because a statesman is neither a philosopher nor a king nor a sophist. He is someone who works, whose actions are based on special knowledge and whose actions reflect the interest of the citizen or the common people. Now, here in this classical description of a statesman, the distinction is very prominent between citizen and the statesman. So, there is a kind of implication of hierarchical relationship, which may seem incompatible in a democratic setup. So, these are the criticisms of statesmanship that we often come across. However, we'll also discuss how, in a democratic setup, we can talk about statesman, how and what would be the function of a statesman. Okay, in the next slide, we'll look further. So, as we got a primary outline, now we focus on the contemporary time, in our time, how statesmen emerge and in a modern state, because statesman is obviously related with the state. So in how in a modern state this statesmanship emerges, that we need to explore. So we need certain preconditions or certain settings that will help a statesman to emerge, and that is the great difficulties and challenges. So statesmanship occurs in the time of great difficulties and challenges. So you cannot presuppose, you cannot plan to emerge as a statesman. It it is contingent. So the contingency, the dealing with contingency is within the capacity of a statesman, and it makes a statesman a statesman. So the great difficulties, it is obviously not personal difficulties, personal challenge. It also includes the collective difficulties, the difficulties, the challenges faced by the nation, faced by the country, faced by the people. And what is the role of a statesman? A statesman steers through or surmounts those challenges posed before him and his people. So the duty of the statesman is to deliver, to overcome the challenges presented in front of him. Then only you emerge or become a statesman when you overcome those challenges, or at least try to overcome those challenges with your people. So these are the two salient features that makes a statesman a statesman. Now in the next slide. So the difficulties that we are talking about was very vague in nature. But if we go in further details, we'll find that a major role that a statesman plays is the constitutional founding or refounding of the polity. It means that a statesman is not merely taking the people out of great difficulties. A statesman is one who makes the polity, the political interaction, the political engagement possible. That is constitutional founding. So we started with the example of Mahatma Gandhi. So what did he do? He actually made the politics possible. He took his people along with him. He dealt with the colonial power, and he let the political game happen or take place in his own terms to a certain extent. Because instead of violence, he chose non-violence. So he, through his engagement, through his intervention, made it possible for India to emerge as an independent democratic nation with a constitutional of its own. So this constitutional founding or refounding becomes very important for the statesman to accomplish. And similarly, guide the state through extraordinary challenges. Now, these extraordinary challenges can be of two kinds. One is that something huge, catastrophic that you need to face with, or it could be the series of contingencies, balancing between competing claims and not allowing your people to go astray, holding them together in course of this journey. That can also part of this extraordinary journey or the difficulties that a statesman need to go through along with his people. For this to be accomplished, a statesman must have certain characteristic. That's moral virtue. It is also highlighted by Greek philosophers that moral excellence, virtue, knowledge, as pointed out in my earlier slides, that becomes very important for a statesman. This moral virtue is something that separates a statesman from ordinary leader. Similarly, the balancing of competing claims. In a society like ours, or in a present day, we find that our polity is fragmented. We have different interest groups competing with each other for dominance or for upper hand, or to overpower each other. In such circumstances, we need to balance these competing claims. So a statesman is supposed to set a balance. You are not allowed to go or take any extreme stance for the sake of your nation, for the sake of your people. And third important characteristic is to rise above the petty politics and partisanship. So you are not craving for your post, your prime ministership, your presidentship, or when your country will be independent. You want the people to emerge victorious. It is not the personal interest of the statesman. It is not the personal politics that is being looked at. You have to rise above petty politics and partisanship, because it becomes very important in our time, because as I said, we are dealing with competing claims, and no one is ready to compromise to budge away from his or her position. Now, in the next slide, we'll look into how the statesmanship is possible in a democratic country, in a democratic, constitutionalized, bureaucratized society. Because it is believed, or many thinkers believe, that a statesman is not a charismatic leader. He is not a tyrant. He is not a military leader. He is not a king. And democracy doesn't allow him to be so. There are checks and balances. So the job of a statesman is to combine persuasion and coercion together to lead his people or his nation, and to reach the goal he has set for himself. So at one hand you have persuasion, and the other hand you have the coercion. This coercion means it is not that you forcefully make people do something. You will be guided by principle. You will be guided by rule of law. You will be guided by constitution. So you cannot say that a statesman is one who override the constitutional obligation, who does not care for constraints, constitutional constraints. Because nowadays our conception of a strong leader, of a strong personality, or a strong political leader is that one who doesn't care, one who at any cost will achieve his or her goal. So that popular conception will not fit into what we understand as a statesman. So now, when we talk about persuasion, there comes the role of rhetoric and dialogue. So we understood statesman and his features, what is he or she is supposed to do, its characteristics, and now we are focusing on the persuasion part, because a statesman is required to interact with its people. You cannot exist in void. You have to connect to the people. You have to engage with the people, and engage in certain way that will make sense to the people. So for this, you need to take recourse to various rhetorical skills. Now we need to understand in the next slide what we actually mean by rhetoric, or its origin, how it is seen. So in Gorgias, Socrates on rhetoric, he says that he is quite dismissive of rhetoric, because rhetoric is an art of persuasion, verbally or in a written form, to make people to agree with you, to buy your arguments, to obtain the consent of the people. So in that case, Socrates says that it is a false art, because rhetoric is devoid of knowledge and truth. It appeals only to emotion, and it has become a source of the power for the demagogue and sophist. So in our language, in our time, we can say that rhetoric is a way to manipulate people. So make people hear, or make people listen to those ideas, those truths, what they want to hear about. And our experience will also to some extent justify this explanation. In the age of post-truth, we are not bothered about truth or knowledge much. A section of our society, only want to hear what they love to be have as a truth, what they think that it should be the truth, not what is fact, what is truth. So that is the reason Plato argues that we cannot take rhetoric uh, seriously, or rhetoric doesn't serve any purpose. However, later Aristotle modifies, and in his book Rhetoric, he presents it as a tool of argumentation, reasoning, and which operates through logos, ethos, and pathos. So Socrates points out that it only appeals to emotion, and emotion can create belief. It cannot take you to the truth. It can form a belief which can be true or false. There is no certainty of truth. But Aristotle takes a different view of rhetoric, and he presents it as an art of persuasion, where logos, you go by reason or logic, where you can employ ethics or ethical appeal, or where you can appeal to the emotion of the people. Through all three measures, you can take people along with you, take their consent, uh, make your argument to the people, and establish the claim that you want to be disseminated among people. So this is how rhetoric is understood in the classical time. And along with rhetoric, it is complemented by dialogue, because dialogue becomes very relevant in a democracy, because it is not the leader who will be do the talking. In a democracy, we are also required to take part in this conversation, in this act of persuasion. So dialogue complements the idea of rhetoric in a way where free exchange of ideas become possible. Aristotle also points out the idea of reasoning, and thereafter it was further developed by Habermas and other theorists who talks about public reasoning. And public reasoning is only possible when you have space for dialogue, not monologue. Rhetoric can be monologues in nature, where the leader says and we passively listen. But when we are talking about democracy or statesmanship in a democracy, we cannot think of any hierarchical relationship. Our leader or statesman and the people are supposed to be on the same platform, and then only the dialogue would be possible. So in the next slide, we'll briefly touch upon the contemporary relevance of all those ideas that we have shared so far, and the challenges that we may face. And the major challenge is that rhetoric, or the way to persuade people, can take a course that is not desirable for a democracy. For example, the rise of populist leaders in our time. They are persuasive, they can convince you, but they lacked, what they lacked is the truth, the fact that is missing. So they can lead to the society to further fragmentation based on your preferences and prejudices. But they will find it difficult to deal with the truth. And when we are talking about the rise of post-truth and the rise of populism, they are going hand in hand. We also need to observe this phenomena as well. Because a populist can rise only when you have the space for post-truth to be consumed by the people. When you can make people think in a way where their version of truth is different from the fact, or what is popularly called alternative facts, that the populists coined this term for their convenience, that alternative facts, my rhetorics allow me to go beyond fact. So that is not the purpose the rhetoric is uh, destined to serve, and that will not make a statesman out of a populist or a demagogue. They will never find a way to come beyond the petty politics of their own interest. A statesman emerges only when he is with truth. as pointed out by Gandhi, the importance of truth in our life. Similarly, we find in the leaders of contemporary worlds that their penchant, their love for monologue, that is also very threatening. That is, we also need to think about. Instead of dialogue, most of the strong leaders, so-called strong leaders, indulge in monologues, where there is no space for dialogue, where you cannot ask question, where we cannot challenge your leader. So what is served to the people is final. You are not there to engage, you are not there to decide, you are not there to challenge. So this monologue is also a kind of threat, and this is not a rhetorical tool to be employed for by any statesman. A statesman will face the question, he will confront the opposite, the contrary, the conflicting ideas, and he will combine the conflicting claims together in a very agreeable manner, rather than taking a very extreme position. So at the end, what we find out through this discussion, that a statesman is one who show his deference to democratic norms and values, and with this democratic norms and values, he take his people together for a greater or better future. But we also need to be cautious that today what we understand by statesman is not a masiha or a savior or a superman or superwoman. In a democratic setup, a statesman is someone who emerges from the crisis, but who is not above us. He or she is among us. So we should not dwell in this delusion that a statesman is a savior. Yes, he is savior, but in this enterprise, we all are with him. We are together with him. That is the very foundation of democracy, that uh, deliberative politics must be encouraged. We cannot take it for granted that a statesman can do anything he or she wants. Dialogue makes the space for this engagement possible. Otherwise, monologues or post-truth society will never be able to produce any statesman.
We have our first question by Sudeep, Professor Sudeep. Do you think rhetoric is a problem with our leaders, but the fact that they are not using their skills to do good for the society?
Yeah, uh, you can say that there could be problem with our leaders, but we at the same time we also need to ponder upon that the greater problem lies with ourselves, because the leaders are coming out of us. And being a vigilant citizen, being a citizen who is ready to fight for their rights, we can put our leaders in our control. But we need to put that effort forward. We cannot say that rhetoric is being put to bad use, but the same rhetoric is also available for all of us to counter the claims or the so-called bad claims made by our leaders. And we need to also engage in a constructive way, so that our leaders do not get the leeway making bad claims. So a part of a responsibility is with us only. I'm not sure how convincing it was.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for that. How can schools and educational institutions better support teachers in integrating these skills into the curriculum?
I believe the classroom is a mini society. So how you conduct your classroom will reflect in the society in general. How you treat your students what are the habits that are encouraged in a classroom that will help us explain the future of our society. And for rhetoric, for dialogue to be an essential part of our classroom, we must overcome the barrier between teacher and the student. Uh, if we observe our classroom, it is arranged in such a way the hierarchy is very much visible. Can we go beyond those hierarchies, whether symbolic or actual? Can we go beyond those hierarchies to foster a dialogue, free dialogue, where the students is not afraid of offending the teacher by raising question or inconvenient questions, or the way the sitting arrangement is made? Because fortunately, I am coming from Tagore's Vishwavarati and the school system that was there. And there, the certain symbolic changes made took very deep impact on our mind. In classrooms, teachers are not placed in a high pedestal. A teacher is sitting with students in a circle. So, or a teacher is among the students, sitting in between the students. He is not sitting on a high chair or a high pedestal, he or she. So that conveys a message that the teacher is among us. And we used to call our teachers as elder brother or sister, dada or didi, the name followed by da or di. So this may seem very trivial, but it has a very long lasting impact, because we can approach our teacher as someone very familiar, as someone who is part of our family, like my elder brother, like my elder sister. So these are the symbolic things that we can do. At the same time, in a very concrete way, what we can do, that we can take uh, inspiration from Paulo Ferreira's pedagogy of the oppressed, how the classroom is conducted, how it should not be conducted. So the conventional wisdom says the teacher is the repository of all the knowledge and students are the passive recipient of those ideas. They have nothing to contribute. They are only there to listen. So this kind of understanding of a classroom becomes a very big impediment in the way of fostering dialogue, conversation. So your knowledge or your learning is limited on the generosity of the teacher. You are not allowed to think freely. You are not allowed to raise questions. So from the very beginning, and we are taught in such a way that a good boy or a good girl will never raise his or her voice, and a good citizen will never question its government. So the same thing, same reflection, the classroom and the society. So we need to break free of this mold. Then only in our day-to-day life and in our collective life, we'll be able to create a culture of democratic exchange, political dialogue, which is informed by mutual respect and without any fear of retribution. That will be possible only when we can break free of this kind of impediments.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for that. We have another question here. Can poor rhetoric be nullified by the freedom of dialogue in a democracy?
Yes, we poor rhetoric can be easily nullified. I mean, from the time of Socrates, as he criticized the rhetoric as a false art, a flattery, a persuasion, it is also relevant today, and it is also true today in our time also, that the only way to challenge a poor rhetoric is to present a better rhetoric. Only way to challenge a poor argument is to present a more factual, a better argument that makes more sense, that is more reasoned argument. So it is not only the art of speaking, it is the art of speaking factually and truthfully that becomes an effective rhetoric.
Thank you, sir, for that. So we have one more question. In what ways can digital platforms be leveraged to enhance teaching rhetoric and dialogue skills?
Digital platforms, if you think of digital platform entirely involving everything from social media to internet and all those engagements that we do in our day-to-day life, we have certain opportunities along with its challenges. But if you specifically focus on the educational purpose, for the educational purpose, I believe this platform is the best example to enhance or expand our learning or our engagement on different topics with different speakers. So it is definitely contributing to those ideals of expanding knowledge using the digital platform, where I am sitting in West Bengal or in any part of the country, engaging with people from different parts or different parts of the world, not only within the country. So, digital platform can be leveraged, and COVID taught us that people can learn and teach digitally or on the digital platform. So, we just need to adopt and adapt at the same time. We need to adopt digital platforms and adapt ourselves to the changes and challenges that come across.
Thank you, sir, for that. Uh, do you think a change in curriculum is required to impart rhetoric and dialogue skills, or is it more of an attitudinal problem of teachers? Or should we have a separate subject that traces the evolution of these ideas from Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle?
That would be too heavy at the school level, I believe. But what needs to be fostered or nurtured is that critical thinking, and that can be done at various levels in various ways. Because rhetorics and dialogue can only take place when you have that space created, you when you allow that space to be had at the first place. And for this, I believe that critical engagement or critical thinking is very essential. Unless you have that approach, you may end up being brainwashed by good rhetoric, so it will backfire in some other way. But yes, from school level to the colleges and the higher studies, what I believe that we essentially need that critical thinking.
Thank you, sir, for that. Do we have any more questions? So we have one question from Manu Dev.
Yes.
Why there is a sudden surge of leaders who are very good at rhetoric, but that is far from real truth, and this trend we are observing throughout the world.
Uh, this, I believe, I also often try to find out the answer of this question, though I didn't find any yet. But I believe the entire setup, the entire ecosystem, if we may say so, uh, the way it is employed and operated probably end up favoring a certain kind of leaders who are loud, who are very vocal, uh, who projects themselves to be strong. Because in popular perception, the way it is created through social media or the traditional media or through our discussion or debates, that a strong leader or a powerful leader is someone who goes beyond the constraints, and sometimes it is constitutional constraints. That is very dangerous. That tendency should not be fed upon. But the way nowadays a strong leader is projected, that uh, we are ready to be, I mean, in a popular surveys that say that we are comfortable with autocracy as long as it serves my purpose. So democracy is seen as a sign of weakness. Following norms is a seen and a sign of weakness. And the valorization of valorization of the a kind of carelessness, ruthlessness, the way it is presented, whether it is in popular culture or in the popular politics, going beyond law, going beyond constraints is something is associated with heroism. Something is associated with achievements. But staying within the periphery of the constraint and delivering, it will be the ideal solution. And the sudden upsurge of this kind of leadership, it is, I believe, it is manufactured. The leaders are manufactured projected in a certain way that it seems very appealing for a section of people to root for him or her at the cost of your freedom, your right, your claims, and your constitutional what entitlements. And obviously, for the leader, the strength must be encouraged to stay in power, but it should not be tolerated by accepted in people in general or common people like us.
Thank you, sir, for that. We have one question from Satyapal. How can we overcome the challenge of post-truth while maintaining rhetoric?
Okay, post-truth. We must note that post-truth is not something new that social media has created or certain leaders have created. You will never find an age of truth, but in every age there was an age of post-truth. So I mean, what should I say? It will be immature to think that the past was the age of truth, and we are suddenly come to the post-truth age. What happened actually that the post-truth phenomena has been accentuated by various mediums that help it to spread very fast, very quickly. So post-truth is not something new, and truth and perspective sometimes are confused or the presented in such a way that whether you are opting for truth or perspective, you forget or you cannot uh, distinguish between them. Facts or my kind of facts, these are two different things. So post-truth, to counter with post-truth, we need better dissemination and presentation of truth. I mean, the social media that spreads post-truth can be also used to spread truth as well. The tool is with us only, but we often lament that the post-truth has arrived with social media. Post-truth is something what we call a WhatsApp university. But WhatsApp can be used also to spread truth, to debunk those claims. Now, people may not have the patience or the inclination to look into the nitty-gritty, or we are more comfortable to a kind of forwarded message rather than investigating ourselves. That is, the fault is on our part. That is not the technology that made us do so. Technology also allows you to examine the claim that is made by your leader. So we must need to be active in our engagement, in our quest for truth. And on this note, if you can also watch the movie Rashomon if you haven't watched it, the Japanese movie Rashomon, so you'll get an idea of what post-truth is and how it is depicted. So post-truth is not something new that we are dealing with at our time.
Thank you, sir, for that. We have another question here. As a guardian of democracy, how we are supposed to deal with this?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Manudev has asked, he has asked a question previously also about a sudden surge of leaders who are very good at rhetoric, but there's a far from real truth. Okay, so he has continued the question as a guardian of democracy, how are we supposed to deal with it?
As a guardian of democracy, or rather than a foot soldier of democracy, what we can do, that we can incorporate democratic practices in our day-to-day life. That is the basic thing that we can or we are supposed to do as a citizen who believe in constitution, who believe in human rights, who believe in equality. Because democracy is not that an election in 5 years. Democracy is day-to-day practice. Not allowing your friend to say the opinion you do not like is also a kind of anti-democratic practice. You may not like his opinion, but at least you create the space for him or her to express that. So once we can integrate and incorporate these small practices as our part of life, we will eventually become a more aware citizen who are aware of their rights, who is ready to hold the power accountable, and who is not afraid to raise questions. So we can do this much as a citizen of this country.
Thank you, sir, for that. Mr. Anil Nair has asked a question here. Should social media presence be stripped of anonymity to ensure accountability and continued faith in democratic institutions? The question is put in the context of toolkits being employed to achieve certain specific outcomes by actors remaining hidden.
Okay, this question is very pertinent, but there are two sides. The supposed toolkit that you mentioned in your question, and also those people who claim that there is a toolkit, their story also need to be revealed. So the idea of toolkit that got very popular these days. So who are claiming that there is a toolkit that is manipulating with the outcome of certain policies or decisions? So what I actually trying to say that you can regulate free speech, but it will never be free speech if it is regulated. Government is anyway planning to bring in bill to regulate social media or content creator to hold them accountable. However, will a limited space, or when you are stripped of your anonymity, will it serve you better or the government better? That is the question we need to raise. Are we doing for the citizen or for the government to suppress, control unpopular, unpalatable opinions and facts? Because controlling things have become easier nowadays. Social media can be regulated. AI can be regulated or modulated, but regulation cannot be a solution, because when regulation will turn into suppression, we'll never know. When regulation will uh, turn into charges of sedition, you will never know. So these are the risks that we need to be aware of. I cannot say or cannot give you a solution regarding this, but there are positive and negative sides of anonymity. Yes, certain things should be dealt strictly. Criminal activities or harassment, those things can be dealt strictly. However, on the other side, we also need to have the space that, can I openly criticize my government? Why should I, at the first place, take shelter under anonymity? That is the first question. What I am presenting on the social media that I need to be anonymous? Either it is against the values or the norms of the society, the legality, or it is against the government or the power who is there. So in that case, if it is against the government and the government is determined to pursue you, it will eventually catch you. So anonymity can be stripped off, can be taken away when you are ensured of the freedom, that you are free to express your opinion, however unpopular it may be, however offensive it may be for the government, for the power. If you are assured of this kind of freedom of speech, then there is no issue with the anonymity being taken away.
Thank you, sir, for that. We have one last question by Satyapal. How can we ensure that those who are using rhetoric skills are not misleading us to wrong paths or ideas? If so, how can we achieve better statementship?
No, popular opinion or the appeal to emotion may lead you to a wrong conclusion or misleading conclusion temporarily, but it is not a permanent state. We must remember this. You can be misled momentarily unless you become part of this project. Nowadays, you cannot be taken away or kept away from truth or knowledge to a certain degree if you do not wish to be part of this entire project. If you wish that I do not want to hear or listen, that I do not like, then there is every chance you will be eternally misled by employing rhetorics or by employing certain persuasive skills that are employed by our leaders. But I also believe that you can, as a citizen, or in our time, ignorance is a choice. It is not a compulsion. To certain degree, ignorance is our personal choice. I chose to be ignorant to certain degree. Yes, some people also lack means of enlightenment or having access to information. Apart from that, we also need to inculcate our education system that will help us understand the difference between misleading claim and the truth or the fact that is there in the place. So education can, to a great degree, serve us to see through this misleading rhetorics.